I'm just going to be drawing for a little bit. You okay with that? If I'm just doing some drawing? Would that be a yes? We're going to draw anyway, so just... And while I'm drawing, I want you to think... I want you to think about something. I want to take a risk here. And I want you to think about what is good art. What makes something good art? Now I realize that's an unfair question because there really isn't a right or a wrong answer to that. There's a subjectivity to it and a difficulty in coming up with an answer that really gives you concrete, that's good or that's bad art. But I want you to think about that because good art and bad art is something we've talked about before. We've explored this idea. But today I want to think about it personally. I want you to think about the question, what is good art? And what isn't? So I'm going to take a risk here and ask you, what do you think these are? Now I know they're works of art, but what do you think that is right there? Just, if you're online, you can type it in. If you're here, just call it out. What do you think that is right there? Who thinks it's a cat? You think it's a cat? Oh, it's going for cat. I nailed it right there. Cat. Well, what do you think that is? Dog. Got it. Nailed it. That's what I was going for. What do you think that is? Mouse? Mouse? Armadillo? I'm not going to tell you what it is right now. I'm going to let you think about it. But you think that's good art? Is that good art? See, it's hard to answer that question, isn't it? Hard to know. What do you mean good art? Compared to what? How do we decide what is good art and what is bad art? How do we decide what is beautiful and what is ugly? How do we decide what is lovely and what is ugly? How do we make those decisions? For the past few weeks, we've been thinking about how to think when we don't know what to think, how to think about things that are abstract and unclear and chaotic. How do we think? And today, I want us to think about how do we determine something is beautiful or lovely. For the past few weeks, we've been thinking about a single sentence from the Bible, from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. And it's a positive instruction. It's encouragement in how to think positively. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is respectable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is worthy of outstanding consideration, think about such things. And I think the instruction on the face of it is saying you should think about good things, not bad things. Because he doesn't say, do not think about whatever is false. And he doesn't say, do not think about whatever is disrespectful, or do not think about whatever is wrong, or impure, or ugly, or mediocre, or worthless. He wants us to figure out, how do we find the good? How do we find the good in a world that is so chaotic and confusing? How do we think about that which is beautiful? And how to think about it before we say something is ugly? See, my prayer today is not that you would know, that all of us would know what is good art and what is bad art, or what to think about art, or how to think of something as beautiful or ugly. My prayer today is that you would simply know the difference, that you would know it when you see it, and that you might take a moment before you label something as ugly to think about what might make it beautiful. See, in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, the word that is there for lovely, that I translated lovely, is the word pros phile. Now, the word pros phile is what theologians call a hapax legomena. I went to school for 12 years to figure out what that word means. And basically, what it means is it is a single-use word. It is a unique word. It doesn't appear anywhere else in the entire Bible. Pros phile is such a rare word, they can only find perhaps allusions to it in one or two other places in all of Koine and secular Greek literature. It's kind of a word that the Apostle Paul just made up. And it has the idea of drawing out affection. You see, pros phile is a mashup. It's a mashup of two words. One of the words is the word pros. And pros is a preposition. And it's a preposition that implies movement. And it can be a spatial movement, moving from here to there. It can be spatial, like moving toward something. Or it can be a temporal movement, like before and after. Before this, it was this. We kind of co-opt the word and proceed and pronounce, and we have that idea of movement in our language, and that's what pros means. Pros is a preposition that implies the source of something, that it began here and now it moved here, either temporally or spatially. The word phile comes from the word philos, which is one of the three words in the New Testament for love. There's the word agape, which means unconditional loving kindness. There's the word eros, which is physical love. And there's the word phile, from which we get filial love, brotherly love, the kind of neighborly love, the love that Philadelphia, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, or philosophia, the love of wisdom, of Sophia. And so what pros phile means, I think what Paul was going for was this idea of something that moves us toward affection, something that stirs in us an emotional reaction. Because I think all great art, things that we believe are beautiful, draw us in. It moves us. We would say, what made that song, or what made that play, or what made that book, or what made that piece of art connect with you? It was something that moved me and stirred in me an affection. And so I want to explore, how do we think about beauty? How do we think about art? And I want to suggest we re-examine three familiar cliches. Actually, it's two familiar cliches and a cliche I just made up. So I want to think about these three cliches and perhaps think about them in a different way. I think you're familiar with at least two of them. The first cliche that informs how we can think about art, how we know good art when we see it, is because of the cliche, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Have you ever heard that? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's basically saying that beauty is subjective, beauty is individualistic. But I also believe that beauty is in the eye of the creator. All of this art here, all of these pieces, all of these mementos, all of these tapestries and drawings, this is the art of my life. These are paintings and mementos that decorate our home and my office and my wife's office. These are art pieces that all have connections to me. They all have meaning to me. This piece of art here was a piece of art that my daughter Leah, my UT Art School graduate daughter Leah, painted for my wife Diane. A couple years ago, she was asking her mom, what do you want for her birthday? And Diane told Leah, I'd like a painting of a cross for my office. And this is what Leah came up with. And because I know the artist, I know what this means. You see, Leah's style, Leah's visual style is what I call sci-fi architecture. And she doesn't see things, she doesn't paint things the way that the average person would paint them. She sees them differently. And for me, this represents her faith. This represents that for her faith is not a simple cross. Her faith is multifaceted. There's pieces to it. There's dimension to it. And it says to me, she's still trying to put it all together. She kind of understands what it is, but she's in process of figuring it out. And you know how I say that? Because I know the artist. Because I know the creator. This is a painting that hangs in my office, right behind my desk. It was a painting that was done for me by a woman named Maxine Roberts here at Riverbend. And I met Maxine and her husband John right after we came to Riverbend 15 years ago. And I was looking forward to getting to know them really well when John passed away. And in the years since, Maxine has become a precious friend of our family. In fact, our artist daughter Leah lived with her for a while. And it was shortly after John had died that we were at her home, and she was showing us her art studio. She's a talented artist. And I had mentioned that, boy, I would love to have in my office a landscape, and in the foreground of the landscape would be a shepherd boy with his sheep. I've never seen a painting that really captured that. It took Maxine 3 years. She did 3 or 4 studies trying to get it the way she wanted it. And then one Christmas, 3 years later, after I had completely forgotten about it, she gave me this painting, and it hangs behind my desk in my office. You see, there's beauty the closer you get to the artist. The more you know about the creator, the more you know about the painter or the maker, the more you connect with what was going on. If you've ever had a friend who was in a play or in a movie, or if you've ever known a person who is an author and you read their work, or you have a friend who is an athlete, or a child who's playing sports, you know that the connection is very personal. And the closer you are to that artist, the more beautiful the art is. Beauty is in the eyes of the creator, because the closer you get to the maker of the art, the more beautiful the art becomes. I think that principle we can run with an application all day about the idea that the more I know about the creator, the more beautiful the creation is to me. The more beautiful the creation, the people and the places and the world that were made by that artist. The more I know about the artist, the closer I am, the more pros phile, the more I am drawn to know that artist, the more beautiful the art. I think it's true that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I also think it's true that beauty is only skin deep. Do you ever hear that? Beauty is only skin deep. I remember the first time I heard it. I was probably sometime 12 or 13 years old, and my father and I were having the talk. You know what the talk is? If you're a young parent and you have pre-adolescent children, you're probably dreading the talk. And for a father with a son, you know, it's one of those things. My dad said, "Dave, we have to have a talk," and he brought me into the bedroom, and he began to explain to me how sexual things worked. And I was curious. But what I remember about his conversation is he said, "Dave, just remember this. Beauty is only skin deep, and women have their ways. And let me tell you, don't be fooled with a couple layers of makeup and a push-up bra, because you don't know what's going on underneath." And I went, "Oh, tell me more, Father. What does this mean?" But what he was saying was, he was warning me. It's the same thing he told me when I was buying my first car. I remember when I went to him and I said, "Dad, I found this car I've saved up, I've worked for a while," and it was a 1972 Triumph TR6, and I took him to see it. He said, "Remember, Dave, beauty is only skin deep, but ugly goes clear to the bone." And what he meant was, you have to know what's below the surface to really find out what it's made of. And he was right about my Triumph. I mean, I drove it for 8 hours and I worked on it for 8 hours. That was just the paradigm of the car. But I don't think that phrase is just a warning. I think that phrase is an invitation to say that, sure, beauty may appear on the surface, but true beauty is more than skin deep. True beauty is in the story. True beauty is when you find out what it takes to create that, or the story behind it. A couple years ago, I showed up at home with this vase. Do you say vase or vase? Anybody say vase? No, everybody says vase. I was taught vase. I guess I'm better than you. So this is a vase, and I brought this vase home and put it in our house here in Austin. And my daughters, each one of them, when they saw it, they said, "What is that? That thing is hideous. That's terrible. What was that, from a rummage sale somewhere?" To which I was somewhat put out. Because you see, I brought this vase home after my mother had died. Because this vase had sat in my great-grandmother's house, and then in my grandmother's house, and then in my mother's house, and now it sits in my house. You see, around the beginning of the 19th century, when you were a dairy farmer in eastern Pennsylvania, you didn't have money for art. You didn't spend money on trivial things like paintings or pottery or sculptures or tapestries. You didn't have the funds for that. You had to be more practical, but this was their art. And I remember when my great-grandmother died, this vase sat in my grandmother's dining room. And it was one of those old stone homes, and when you ran through the dining room, the whole floor would shake, and the pedestal that this was on. I associate my memory of this vase with my mother going, "David, don't you run through there, you break that vase, I will break you." And that vase sat in my grandparents' home until my grandmother died, and it sat in my mother's home until she moved to a retirement apartment, and she died. And now it sits in my home, and I told my daughters there will be a day when it will sit in your home. And then it will sit in the home of your children and of your grandchildren. And the connection and the beauty of this is in that story. Because when you know the story, you know the beauty. It's like ballet. Anybody a ballet fan who doesn't have a kid in ballet? I know, you're gonna pretend, "Oh, I'm sophisticated, I go to the ballet." No, you don't. When was the last time you paid money to go see a ballet one of your children wasn't in? Then why isn't ballet more popular? Ballet physically is spectacular. If you and I, just average people, tried to do the stuff that prima ballerinas did, we would dislocate something and wind up in the hospital. They defy gravity. You have no idea what it takes to do that. And if you have some idea, if you've ever studied ballet, the more you've studied it, the more beauty you see when you see them defy gravity and pirouette and move through the air effortlessly. It's like jazz. Any of you like jazz? No, I didn't think so. I mean, jazz is music for unemployed musicians, is what I've heard. There's a scene from The Simpsons. You know The Simpsons? The Simpsons. It's the training ground of children in satire and irony. And there's a scene where Homer is driving through Springfield, and he drives by the jazz radio station. And the header on the jazz radio station says, 152 Americans can't be wrong. Like that's all that listens to jazz. But the reality is jazz is so complicated. There's a fictitious interview that I found online between an interviewer and Yogi Berra. If you know who Yogi Berra is, he's famous for his malaprops, for his misspeaking. And they imagined that the interviewer was asking Yogi Berra to explain jazz. And this is how they imagined it went. The interviewer says, "Can you explain jazz?" And Yogi says, I can't, but I will. 90% of all jazz is half improvisation. If you play the wrong part, it's right. If you play the right part, it might be right if you play it wrong enough. But if you play it too right, it's wrong. Interviewer, I don't understand. Anyone who understands jazz know you can't understand it. It's too complicated. That's what's so simple about it. Interviewer, do you understand it? Yogi, no. That's why I can explain it. If I understood it, I wouldn't know anything about it. Interviewer, are there any great jazz players alive today? Yogi, no. All the great jazz players alive today are dead. Some of them are dead. So many of them are dead. The ones that are still alive are dying to be like the ones that are dead. Some would kill for it. Interviewer, now I really don't understand. Yogi, I haven't taught you enough for you to not understand jazz that well. Beauty is below the surface. True beauty is more than skin deep. The more difficult we know it is, the more challenging it is, the more we know about what it takes to create the art, to tell the story, to give the performance, to paint the picture, the more beauty and more substance that it has. This is prosphile. It's a movement. It's a movement toward understanding. Before you decide that something is ugly, find out the story behind it. Find out the story, or find out how it was fashioned, or what it took to make it. The beauty of true beauty is really found below the surface. It is found in the substance of it. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You could say beauty is in the eye of the creator. And beauty is only skin deep, but beauty actually is more than skin deep. And the third cliche is a cliche that I plagiarized and twisted from Forrest Gump. And I say it this way: beauty is as beauty does. Beauty is not in what it is, but what it does. There's a drawing over here. It's a colored pencil drawing that hangs in my office next to Maxine's portrait of a shepherd. And it's a portrait of a shepherd reaching down, hanging onto a cliff and reaching down for a sheep. It's a drawing that I did. I made that drawing. It was 1990. I was in my early 30s, and I was new in ministry, and I was serving in a very small church in Richardson, Texas, and I was exhausted. We had 3 preschool children, and we weren't making any money, and I didn't know what I was doing. And my heart was breaking because I felt like everything I was doing was wrong, and everybody was telling me that everything I was doing was wrong. And it was a struggle, and I needed an outlet, so I decided to start a drawing. And I started to draw a picture of a shepherd reaching down for a sheep, and it took me about 3 months and layers of colored pencils to finish it. But it was kind of cathartic for me. In fact, I signed it. Down in the bottom corner, you can barely see it anymore, are my initials and the indication of a Bible verse, Luke 15:4. In Luke chapter 15, Jesus is describing why it was that he spent all of his time with the marginalized and the disenfranchised, with the outsiders, with the rabble. And he says, well, if a shepherd had 100 sheep and one of the sheep went missing, would he not leave the 99 in the wilderness and do everything he can until he rescued the one that was lost? And I said, that's me. That's what I want to be. I want to be the one who doesn't spend all of his time taking care of and patting on the head the sheep in the center of the flock. I want to be out on the fringes. I want to be down in the ditches. I want to be hanging from the cliffs and taking the risks. And my heart was aching because that shepherd was me. That's who I wanted to be. 15 years later, when I came to Riverbend, I got the permission to be that shepherd. Because that shepherd isn't just me, that shepherd is us. That is Riverbend. That is the beauty of this place. You know, over the last 6 months, this has been weird. Has it been weird for you, this whole COVID thing? I don't know if you've noticed it, but it's really kind of turned things upside down. And here, I mean, look at us. We got 5 times as many people watching online as we have in the room. There were months where there was no one here. I was normally talking to myself, but I was really talking to myself. And that's just a small sample of just the challenges that everyone has faced. And as we look for, okay, what are those redemptive things like Casey sang about? What are the stars in the night sky? One of them is that there are hundreds, if not literally thousands of people who have discovered Riverbend and never been here. I know about this because they send me emails, they send me letters, they send me checks, for crying out loud, and they've never been on our campus. And they discovered Riverbend and they said, what you're talking about, the community that you have there is so inspiring to me. I wanted to thank you for it. And they're from all across Austin and all across our country and even around the world. And they've never been on our campus. I can't wait till you can come here. You know why? Because this place is beautiful. This campus, this physical campus is beautiful. I believe with an incredible amount of prejudice that this is the most beautiful church campus in the entire city of Austin. This room, you think this room looks good on camera? You should be here in person. It's a work of art. It is a gorgeous space. It is a space that affirms the value of beauty and the arts and excellence in everything that we do. And I can't wait for you to find your way here, to physically be on this place. But that's not the real beauty of this place. The real beauty of this place is not in what Riverbend is. It's what Riverbend does. Because Riverbend is made up not only of the bruised and the battered and the broken and the bored and the blessed. It's made up of people from every generation. From infants to seniors, the rich and the poor, the successes and the failures, those who are cruising and those who are struggling. It is this beautiful mosaic of people caring for each other in ways like I have never experienced. And during this season, when we can't be together physically, I have seen that beauty poured out on one another and on our community and on people in need over and over and over, thousands, even tens of thousands of times. And that's the beauty of this place. The real beauty of this place is not the physical facilities, and they are beautiful. It's not what Riverbend is, it's who Riverbend is. Beauty is as beauty does. We create beauty through our generosity, through our kindness, through our grace. The beauty of this place is not the beauty of this place. It's the beauty that goes out from this place. You see, beauty is as beauty does. And beauty is this thing that is more than skin deep. True beauty is beyond the surface. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder, true, but it's also in the eye of the creator. When we know the artist, when we know the story, when we make the art ourselves, then we know the beauty. We found the beauty. It's prosphilos. It's what draws us in. It's what moves us. It's what takes us from here to there. Whatsoever is prosphilos. Think about these things. Last summer, Diane and I had a chance to go to Paris. And I was excited to go there with my bride. And I was looking forward to going to the Louvre. I mean, who doesn't want to go to the Louvre? And when you go to the Louvre, what do you go to look for? You go to the Louvre to look for the Mona Lisa. And I was excited to see the Mona Lisa. They have signs kind of this way to the Mona Lisa. And when you got there, it was insane. It was like she was a rock star, and the room was just packed with people. You couldn't get within 50 feet of the painting. And the painting's only about this big anyway. And I could see over the heads of a number of the people there, but my wife, who was shorter, couldn't see this at all. And I was so put out. I was like, oh, I'm harumphing out as we leave. I couldn't see the Mona Lisa. I wanted to see the simplistic beauty of Da Vinci's. I had studied it and heard about it for so long, and we couldn't even get within 50 feet of it. And I walked out, and I was kind of put out, and then I was overwhelmed. The Louvre is just room after room after room of these works, magnificent works of art. But we walked by one, and it prosphyled me. It grabbed me. It's, come here, look at me. And I sat down on a bench in this gallery, and I don't know how long I sat there. It seemed like forever. People were walking back and forth in front of it. And the painting I was staring at was by Caravaggio. It's called The Death of the Virgin. And I knew enough about Caravaggio, they call him the master of light, that I'm an admirer of his work, and I knew about this particular painting. I knew that this painting had been commissioned by the Roman Catholic Church to be placed in a monastery outside of Rome. And he worked on it for 5 years. And when he finally presented it to the monks at the monastery, they rejected it. They said, this will never hang in a sacred building. And the reason that they said that was because Caravaggio had portrayed the Virgin Mother, had portrayed Mary as an ordinary human. In fact, the urban legend that grew up around Caravaggio's The Death of the Virgin was that he had used as the model for Mary, his actual lover, who was reportedly a prostitute. You see, Caravaggio was a total scoundrel. And so no one put that past him. And the faces of the disciples that are gathered around Mary, typically in that day, when you were a painter and you got a commission, the people that paid for the commission would appear in your paintings. Like if you were painting a biblical epic painting, the people that would be gathered there would be the faces of your patrons. But none of these were his patrons. These were just people from the marketplace, just his friends, fellow scoundrels. Did that make it bad art? Did that make what Caravaggio had done bad art? The painting got handed around for 200 years until it wound up in the possession of King Louis XIV, and then after the French Revolution, it became the property of the French government, and there it was hanging in the Louvre, and it grabbed me. It reached out and it compelled me. It stirred in me this connection that's prosphyle. What is beauty? What is beauty? It's a thing that moves us. It's a thing that draws us into our affection. It's the thing that connects us with an emotional experience. It's the song or the story or the dance or the film or the play or the sculpture or the painting that connects with our hearts, with our philos, with our emotions. And this is what we are to think on. Finally, the bottom line, Paul says, brothers and sisters, for all of us, is that if there's anything that's true, if there's anything that is respectable, if there's anything that's right, if there's anything that's pure, if there's anything that's prosphyle, that's lovely, that's beautiful, if there's anything that is admirable, if anything is worthy of outstanding recognition, think about such things. See, I can't tell you what is good art and bad art. I can tell you what I meant for this to be. I mean, maybe you would understand what I meant for this to be if I did this. I could stand here all day and do this, but now what do you think it is? Possum. It's a possum. If I wanted to draw a mouse, if I wanted to draw an evil mouse, this is how you draw an evil mouse. You ready? That's how you draw an evil mouse, something like that. This is how I draw a mouse. I draw a mouse like this. That's a mouse. What do you think about